Hey guys, we're at MonsterCon in Baltimore.
Just so you know. We asked him to be in one, he was like, absolutely not. We came back after one and done really well, like, how about being in two? No, absolutely not happening. Thank you. We approached it for three, and we got like a slightly nicer door kind of open answer, which was, Eddie's not able to do this kind of thing at this time. They didn't tell us that he was, we kind of heard he was sick, we didn't know how sick he was, so, but I mean, he was already really sick, so that wasn't gonna happen, sadly, but, yeah, but it was not without trying, yeah. Lost Boys, I'm assuming that, look, the age we live in, I mean, every single movie has been rebooted, so, and there's been reboots that Bill and Ted's read them, it's like there was one reboot with like two Valley dudes using a cell phone. It was like the most unimaginative thing possible. Use their cell phone to like go through time. It was the worst thing ever. And they might do that. I mean, I don't know. We don't know yet. So I mean, they could do that at some point. We'll be able to stop them. But with Lost Boys, I'm like, there's certain remakes that you can't, like I felt this way about Carpenter's The Thing, which was already a remake, right? But it's such a distinctive movie, like unto itself. It's such a unique piece of like its era and that filmmaker and the times and those actors. You can't pave over that. And I feel so strongly about how resonant, this has nothing to do with me, I have a tiny part, but how resonant Lost Boys is as a kind of a piece of culture. Like you can't reboot that into non-existence, right? So I'm not particularly worried about it. It's like they'll either make a great movie, in which case it'll live on its own and just happen to have the same title as our movie, or it'll vanish without a trace. Like so many of these remakes we're staying up here, it's like, I mean, they've remade every single movie. I mean, I don't even know about half of them because they just don't register, So like there's 95 Dawn of the Deads, and there's 95 this, and there's 95 that, and like, I don't even know how. Sometimes I'm amazed. I think they've remade The Thing like 95 times since the Carpenter ones. I don't even know about them. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. How many of those are there? Like 25? Yeah. They just do one every 6 months, I think. So I'm not particularly worried about it. I'm really happy with that movie. That movie was really weird. Like none of us knew what Joel was up to while we were making it. It was so idiosyncratic. It was fun. Like we weren't turning our nose up at it. It was really fun. But I remember sitting in the theater for that premiere and just thinking, oh, holy shit, this is really good, Like he really like had the whole thing mapped out perfectly. And like he tread this weird genre line between comedy and horror and teen and like, all of these different tropes. It's really hard to do what he did. I don't even think the studio ever really quite knew what he was up to. You can't there's no way you can replicate that. It's impossible. It's such a weird one-off. So I just hope they make a good movie. It's better to have more good movies in the world than more bad movies in the world. Did you? That was my vampire blood. What do you mean? You must not have been watching very closely. Yeah, I have no idea what happened to it, but I kept it. I think it disintegrated within a month, probably. Yeah.
Can we have the back that one? I thought I saw it hand up.
What was it like filming that Marco's death scene?
It was fun. I mean, I've told this story 100 times, but Corey scratched my cornea. I had to go to the hospital that night. It was like a three-parter, right? Because they had me hanging, so they had me bolted up into the roof of the stage set that the cave was built on. Joel had this idea. I don't know how many you've heard this. He's told this story. He's no longer around. He used to tell the story very well. He had this vision of the cave being filled with flies, and this was pre-CGI. So they literally carted in like 80 million flies, like house flies, into the set. And if you've seen the movie, and like the production designer Bill Welch and like Mike Chapman were just fighting the whole movie because Bo would build these incredible sets, like the arcade set, which was this extraordinary set. It was this, supposed to be a hotel ballroom after an earthquake, right? Like chairs hanging from the ceiling. And Mike Chapman would go in and be like, I want a light here, no other lights. And you'd be like, you couldn't see shit, right? And it was like pitch black. And Bo would be like, I spent $10 million in like 8 months and you can't see my set. So you imagine what unleashing 80 million flies into Mike Chapman's set did, right? It didn't do anything. Couldn't see a fly, not one. But they were there. They were all there. Not only were they all there, but flies procreate at a crazy ass rate. So all of Warner Brothers Studios for like 2 years was completely infested with houseflies. You cannot see, I defy you to find a housefly in that sequence. One. You will not. And it's so fucking dark that they are invisible. Right? So there was that. And then they dropped the stuntman into the ground, and they built a whole body for me, like a literal replicated. They did a full, body cast, and they dropped it like a dummy in my wardrobe with a stake through it. If you watch closely, you can completely see it's a retractable stake. They didn't even bother. There was no CGI, so they couldn't paint over anything. So it's just this obvious fake stake that Corey's holding. That's just hilarious. And then I land in the dirt, and I've got these like really gnarly contact lenses in. And both of the Coreys just start screaming and kicking, and they're just literally shoveling dirt into my eyes. And I'm an actor, like I'll roll with it while the camera's rolling, so I'm screaming and blood squirting out of my chest, and they're literally just shoveling dirt into my contact lenses, contact lenses don't like dirt. So my eyes were completely screwed up, so I went right from that shot to the hospital. So it was all done in one, like take one, goodbye. So me and the flies got into the animal. Oh, we went. So that was what shooting that was like. Thank you for asking.
Do you have any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
I'm doing another doc right now on Google and YouTube and kind of the impact they've had on the planet, basically, for good and for not good. And that's almost done. I'm working with Gail Ann Hurd on that, a Walking Dead film. She and I are producing that together, and that's almost done. So it'll be out next year.
Up front? And in the back of the
I have to admit, I haven't seen it yet, but I know.
You haven't seen what?
On the Goldbergs, they did an homage to Bill and
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
I wonder if you had anything to do with it.
I mean, they asked me for likeness. They asked me for likeness rights, so I knew they were up to something. And I saw some of it on social. I've never seen the show. But I mean, people have done, look, we're super honored. They are little movies, they really are homespun, considering the appeal they've had. All three of the Bill and Ted movies were basically independent films. Like, they were never made with big studio support. They never have huge marketing budgets. So we're like a little engine that could and a little engine that often can't, basically. So we're always happy when people are interested in the characters, or we think it's, it's cool. It's like we see people with the shirts or whatever. I mean, it's very homespun, so that's been kind of nice. Yeah.
Is there any like secrets about the Lost Boys, or like any thing that IMDb doesn't know about that you could tell us, like some cool fact or something?
About making it?
About any aspect of the Lost Boys.
I don't know. I don't know exactly. I don't know what's on IMDb. I'm too scared to look at anything that has a comment section. But there's a lot of stories. I mean, it was a weird movie in that there was for me, I've been acting a long time, but I'd never been in it felt like a big Hollywood movie because Donner was producing, and when I was auditioning, I met with the casting director was Marion Dougherty, who was very famous, discovered James Dean and stuff. And so for me, I was a film student at NYU at the time. The whole thing, I was like this kind of wide-eyed kid in a candy store, oh my God, it's Marion Dougherty. Oh my God, it's Richard Donner. Oh my God, it's Mike Chapman. He shot Raging Bull, So there was a lot of pressure on everybody, a lot of pressure on Joel to succeed with that movie from Warner Brothers, and not a lot of support, meaning they didn't quite understand what he was doing. Donner had he was very powerful at the time, like Lethal Weapon and stuff, so he had given Warner's his word that it would be good. But we all felt a lot of pressure. Like it was fun, but it was everyone was a little on edge. But it was a, I don't know if it's really kind of behind the scenes dirt. It was just a really fun time to be in. It was the end of a certain era in Hollywood. It was like the back end of the 80s. They kind of didn't make them like that anymore after that. And so I'm grateful I got to be, I remember going to do my first hair test, and I'm sitting in one chair, and literally the next chair over is Mel Gibson getting his mullet for Lethal Weapon. While I'm sitting there, and I was like, holy shit, that's a really fucking ugly haircut. While I'm getting extensions woven into my head, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? But it was Mel Gibson. It was Lethal. It was like all this stuff was happening that was really like being kind of part of a certain period of history that was really exciting, even I think for Joel. So that part of it was just, I don't know, there was a sincerity to the making of that movie. It wasn't cocky. It wasn't like walking onto it. Everyone thought, we're the bee's knees and we're gonna knock it out of the park. It was like, everyone's gunning for us to fail, let's really try not to fail. It was really the genuine vibe on that. There's a lot of stuff I can't talk about what happened behind the scenes, because it was the 80s and everyone was out of their mind, and drugs were totally rampant, and the kids were completely batshit. But some of them aren't alive anymore, sadly.
It's gotta be a quick one. I gotta wrap it up.
Great soundtrack, Lost Boys, my favorite track on that.
Oh, the Echo of the Bunny Man. No question. Yeah.
People's Race.
Yeah, it's one of the